other fish, the bad fish, they would just simply discard, throw it out for the birds of the air or whatever to eat. Now, some people try to say, well, there's a distinction between, or what is it that made the fish bad or bad fish? Was it dead? Were they small? Were they fish that people didn't eat? I don't think that's the point. The point was this, is that either the fish was good and you kept it and you sold it, or it was something about it that was bad and you did not keep it. And Jesus said this is how it's going to be at the end of the age. The angels will come forth, and they're going to separate the wicked from the just, the good from the bad. And the bad is going to be cast into the furnace of fire where there will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. And again, we don't have to wonder what Jesus was talking about. He told us very clearly that this was about separation. This was about judgment. This was about that time when God separates the good from the bad, the saved from the lost. And so the second thing we want to look at is the comparison of the parable. I mentioned that some people see no difference between this parable and the parable of the tares. And you remember in that parable, a man sowed wheat, and Jesus referred to them as the sons of God. But an enemy, whom he described as the devil, sowed tares, which were the sons of the devil. And Jesus said the same thing at the end of that parable that he says at the end of this one. Back in verses 40 and 42, here's what he says. He says, therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and those who practice lawlessness, and will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. So it seems like these two parables are saying the same thing. They both talk about judgment. They talk about separation between good and bad, the sons of God, the sons of the devil. But here's the difference. In the parable of the tares, the major emphasis was upon the coexistence between the good and the bad, between believers and unbelievers. Jesus said you've got to leave them alone. They will live side by side until the time of judgment. The emphasis in this parable is on the actual judgment, the actual separation. You remember in the parable of the tares, the servants said, let us go and pull up the tares. And Jesus said this. He said, no, let them grow together until the time of the harvest, until the time of judgment. And so all throughout time, as man knows it, God permits unbelief along with belief. He permits righteousness and unrighteousness to coexist, be side by side. He allows the wicked to continue just as he does the righteous, but the day is coming when God says that's it. There's not going to be any more existence of the unrighteous, the ungodly, the bad. And so the day is coming, here's what Jesus is saying, when the net of mankind, God's going to cast a net, and he's going to draw all men in. And when he does, he's going to separate the good from the bad. That's the point of this parable. Now, what are the truths or the lesson that Jesus wants us to know? Well, the chief lesson, as I said in this parable, is that of judgment, gathering men for judgment. And so notice these lessons from this parable. Number one is this, is that judgment is coming. That's what this dragnet represents. It represents the great gathering of all men. Notice that Jesus said the dragnet was cast into the sea and gathered some of every kind. In other words, nothing escaped. Everything was captured in the net. Big, small, living fish, dead fish, clean fish, unclean fish. It didn't matter. All were caught in this net. And when it comes to judgment, listen, nobody will escape it. Try to picture this in your mind. As I said, these nets were very large. And you may have even seen this on some documentaries or something, but let's say that you have a fish over here, and it's swimming toward the net that way. The fish sees that net and immediately turns to swim away from it. But what the fish doesn't realize is that net has made a big circle, and the net is over there too.